Dear Behcet, I am very honored to have you as my guest today. For all of you, Dr. Behcet Acikmese is a professor in Aeronautics and Astronautics at the University of Washington, and formerly he was working at NASA GPL. He has a lot of experience and control systems. So again, I am very honored to have you as my guest today. To keep this interview concise and focused, I would like to begin by asking the first two general questions that I am curious to hear your answers to. So the first question is, as being one of the role models in control systems field, what inspired you to pursue a career in this field and how did you get started?
First of all, thanks for inviting me, Tansel. It's really nice being here, and thanks for calling me a role model. I hope, or maybe I shouldn't hope to be one.
You are.
And the way that I got going in control was an interesting story, at least for me. I was actually working in another field, pursuing my PhD. And at that time, for a variety of reasons, I was interested in stability analysis. And somebody suggested that maybe I should take a linear systems course as a, to learn some of the basic ideas and so on. And I took that course, the standard linear systems course, and I loved it. There were two reasons. One was I always loved linear algebra and mathematics. So I thought this was a course I could do by just pen and paper, and the concepts were very, natural and entertaining to me. And that was very attractive at the beginning. And also the course was taught by my former advisor, Martin Corliss. I thought he was a great teacher too. And his course was very well organized, insightful, and so on. And I thought that the course was significantly more different than anything I took before. And the intensity with which we used linear algebra really attracted me. So that's how I got going. And after I took that course, I couldn't, and I started reading other stuff too. And I said, this is the thing I have to do in the long term. And maybe at the time I was not very happy with what I was doing. And I thought, I gave up a couple of years there. But I think it was one of my best decisions. I found something that I really enjoy doing. I think it's one lesson I learned. If you identify something you really love to do, just do that. Don't worry about the immediate things that may be a bit of trouble or challenge. Just focus on the long term and do it. And I think it was my best professional decision to switch to controls.
That's awesome. Thanks. So the second question is, how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance while pursuing a demanding career in engineering? For example, what hobbies, activities do you engage outside of your professional career? Do you have any advice to young professionals who start just to the academia, like assistant professors like Burak?
Yeah. I mean, probably you can give better advice on that, Tansel. I know you you are interested in music. I cannot claim I have a good work-life balance. I wish I could. As you mentioned, I was working at NASA Jet Propulsion Labs for 10 years. Then I switched to academia at a bit later point in my career, not very typical probably. So, I was always busy in the last 20 years. So I really could not pursue some of my hobbies, if there were any, very aggressively. And unfortunately, my hobbies were typically, I enjoyed doing sports when I was younger. I was pretty active person for two reasons. One is really the intensity of the work. The second is getting older. Those things are curtailing my efforts and enthusiasm, let's say. But, I think one thing I learned is anytime I'm not claiming my life is very balanced in that way, but anytime if the balance is going negative, meaning that I'm losing the balance even more, it affects your work negatively, in my opinion. And I think having that balance helps you being clear-minded, more efficient, effective. In that way, I can observe its positive impact, but I can't really control it that well. So I'm not the best person to ask, maybe.
The same. I mean, yeah, I can feel you. So I would like to transition to two questions related with research. So the first one is, could you please provide an overview of your current research and share what excites you the most about it?
My work is centered around several things. One is optimization, convex optimization and its applications in control theory and applications. The other is, I got into convex optimization during my PhD. Those days I was using it for robust control, semi-definite programming. I was a consumer of convex optimization. Then I started using it as a tool to do trajectory planning. Again, I continued LMI work, but mostly now I'm using it for trajectory planning. That excites me. That always excites me. Converting problems, whether they are in robust nonlinear control or trajectory planning, into convex optimization problems, I think it's a useful thing to do. I found many applications for convex optimization in theory and in practice. So that's an exciting topic for me. I am now more interested in using, for example, in trajectory planning, we were using it for nominal trajectory planning, what I call nominal trajectory planning, for a long time. But now we are also getting into trajectory planning in the presence of uncertainty. Typically, uncertainty is handled separately via feedback control or something else. How do you handle formally uncertainties with planning is a topic that I'm excited these days. Another thing that I'm excited about is how do you, when you do robust control and trajectory planning, you typically do them separately. Of course, in model predictive control, people have thought of ways to do them jointly, but can you make this joint synthesis even more joint, in a way of speaking, even more hardly coupled? I think there is more to be digged out in that domain. And do feedback control a bit more properly and a bit more aggressively. That's something that I'm interested in. Multi-agent systems like yourself, I'm interested in that always. There are many interesting applications as we speak and as we imagine, I guess. For example, in space, applications are typically coming from aerospace engineering. In space engineering, you see satellites being, thousands of them actually, launched to establish networks and so on now, which is really, really exciting. And I think there will be more applications of this kind coming up. And I think in those applications, controls will play and is playing a key role. Also optimization. When you start utilizing such vast number of items, engineered items in space, to make best use of them is non-trivial. Certain things for a single or several agents, certain things that are trivial becomes very, very challenging problems. So how do you handle those things? That's another area that I'm really excited about these days. Am I forgetting anything? I think in summary, at the heart of the things that in terms of theory that excites me is convex optimization, algorithms to solve convex optimization problems effectively, carrying it to non-convex optimization, exploiting, convexity, whatever and wherever that it may exist, to my advantage. Those are things that excite me, and finding new application areas for control theory, finding interesting problems is also another exciting thing I try to do. I think more than solutions, finding interesting problems is maybe is our main job. If we do that well, good solutions will come out, hopefully.
I agree. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So another one is, suppose you had the ability to use your expertise in control systems to address one of today's major global issues. What do you choose? I just would like to get your opinion. I mean, we are all approaching, right? I mean, from some context, but I just would like to ask this to you.
I mean, there are things that I think I can help, and I'm trying to help. In space, there are exciting applications, and I like to get engaged in them as much as I can. But now I will switch to maybe a bit of something that I don't wish I did. I wish I worked in healthcare, medical field, somehow affect development of new therapies, new treatments, understanding of how diseases evolve, not only communicable diseases, but diseases that we face, individuals face all the time, cancer, heart disease, and other things. I think that has a huge impact. As we live longer, society will need different things now that we didn't even consider in the past, probably. People want to stay healthier, have a long, productive lives, and we want to also eradicate all the communicable diseases like COVID. Get a handle on that. But understanding and contributing to the control of biology is something that would really interest me, but I don't really know anything about, really, for all practical purposes. So that's an area that I wish I could get into. Other than that, I think that's, if I had to pick one, I would pick that one. Somehow use the tools that I know to understand human biology and biology in general better, and help humans live healthier, happier lives.
Thanks a lot. So I would like to shift our focus to two questions related with education right now. So the first one, based on your significant expertise in the field, what advice would you give to young professionals who are working to make a lasting impact on their students and on the field of education as a whole?
I mean, first, let me approach it from this person's view who is trying to learn what's going on, and maybe a younger person. I think when you get into any field, you realize, oh my God, there's a lot to learn, and I know nothing, and probably I will not learn most of these things, and I'll not be able to make a contribution. That's not a good way to look at things. 1,000 years from now, who knows what people will think about what we did right now.
That's true. Yeah.
So, anything we do that we believe is what anybody should do may become sometimes irrelevant even. So, first of all, you shouldn't be intimidated with any field you are getting into. And, as young people, they will be the ones who are going to make the contribution. So, I think you should get into problems. I think that's maybe the best way to get through that stage. If you stay in the learning mode constantly, which is, of course, what you have to do to some extent, but if you stay in that mode, you may spend all your life learning about what already exists. But also, in the meantime, you have to find a way to engage yourselves with some problems, maybe something that's even real, not only research problem, maybe, but some problem that's real, that's challenging, and people have some solutions maybe, but they are not ideal, or they could be improved. Get into a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Once, then you realize you go through all the stages of technology development, in a way of speaking, from idea conception to mathematical formalism to, as a person who develops algorithms, developing algorithms, their impact on a physical system, what you might have done better. Thinking through all these problems give you perspectives and insights that is almost impossible to get by just learning, passive learning. So I think getting into some form of action and contributing to some field is always very helpful. Even at this current point in my career, if they give me any opportunity to get my hands dirty with any problem that's of interest to me, of course, I would. My first response is yes, let's do it, because the speed and that I learned that way is far greater than with passive. I don't want to call it passive learning, but with more maybe academic learning.
Sure.
And I think that that opens your eyes and senses in many ways that you couldn't imagine. So, and also you interact with people that I found very, very also expanding, in terms of your intellectual curiosity, ability, and so on. I think in summary, don't get intimidated with any field and get into it and work hard. Of course, there's no substitute for hard work, and things will hopefully happen. That's maybe my advice from a new person's point of view. I mean, from an educator point of view, I mean, as you mentioned before we started, who knows where education is going? The speed that it is changing right now is, I don't think anybody knows where it will land exactly. Obviously, we have to use new media devices that are in our disposals, right? Like you are doing right now. You are talking to people and getting their perspectives and make it available to a wider population. I think it's great. I think people, especially young people, will benefit from this tremendously. But again, it's very hard to see where it's going. I think we have to somehow use it. The education has to become in-person education, has to become somehow more interactive. Not the past, education, if you see it as a technology, it didn't evolve that fast. Maybe it's that it will evolve so fast that also there may be some negatives coming out of this. So how do you balance all these things and achieve something meaningful? It's a challenging problem. I don't have a good answer for that. But all I am trying to do right now is trying to be aware of what students do. How do they like to learn? How am I using these tools right now? I'm listening a lot of things on YouTube right now. If I want to learn something, I'm trying to find a video that explains the key concepts easily, because it's an easy way to learn,
That's right.
And then there's no point to resist that unnecessarily, I guess. But in the meantime, that may have this kind of learning may have some disadvantages too. Blending what we used to do with this one is a challenge, and I guess all I can do right now is be aware and hopefully and get engaged and see what happens.
Thanks a lot. When I also start watching some content from YouTube, I take my pen and paper and write it down. Some of my students claim I watch and learn, then they do poorly in the exam. You just, controls, especially not like, you look at some, okay, this guy, let's say, develop have a Lyapunov function, take the derivative, and everything is good, but you actually need to do it by yourself to get some.
Maybe, with watching, there's always this following danger that I found, I'll give you a completely unrelated two examples. One is I'm sure a lot of people may do. In my free time, I listen to a lot of podcasts and watch YouTube videos when I want to relax on other subjects. It may be history, current events, whatnot, something that I have interest in. Let's say history, okay. You listen, and you see, I knew about these things, but I didn't know all these details. You learn a lot at the time. But a week after that, you don't remember most of it. So you are more or less where you started. And the reason is there is a lot of other things you have to do to have the knowledge, capability, insight to be permanent. That comes with doing work. And another very even maybe more striking example is if you are interested in sports, you may watch, like when you are maybe more capable. When I was younger, I used to watch sports more, maybe when I want to relax. If you are watching, let's say basketball, I used to like, you feel like I can do that. By just watching enough, you feel like, okay, it doesn't look that difficult or strange. But if you don't put the effort, which is huge, you can't even get close to that level of activity. And when you go and try to do that against people who know how to do these things, you get humbled very easily. And you don't understand, if you are not experienced, the difference between something that looks very like a small step when you watch versus when you do. I think that you have to do a lot of weightlifting or a lot of grunt work to get good in an area. And maybe watching things, again, you become passive. You enjoy more. It satisfies you in other ways, but it doesn't really prepare you for anything real in that area, if that makes sense.
That make a lot of sense. I mean, both examples are great. Also, I am a big fan of watching a lot of history related stuff from YouTube. And there, yeah, as you said, I mean, when you watch, I mean, it was like you excite, you think that, wow, you learn a lot. Then after a week, you only remember maybe 5%, 4%, or something minimal. But yeah, I mean, both of them are great examples. Actually, for these,
Effort is a huge teacher.
yeah.
If you get your hands dirty in the subject, you think hard, you try to solve a problem. Those are different things than just listening or watching somebody do something.
Exactly. So I would like to change the focus to several questions, personal questions that I'm eager to hear your responses to. The first one is, um, can you share a memorable experience you have had with a mentor, with a colleague, or a student that has left a lasting impression on you and on your work?
Oh, that's a that's an interesting one. Maybe I have too many.
That's what I
I have
thought.
in different places, so I have had different. I mean, I have had colleagues of mine and mentors of mine who had huge impact on the way in my professional development. Starting with my advisor, I mean, maybe instead of I give an instant of, I mean, that instant summarized everything actually. When I went to him, I took his course, and I did very well in his course. And after a couple of months, I couldn't get it out of my head. I have to work on this. Then I went to him and I said, look, I'm maybe at the time I was maybe 2 years at most away from getting my PhD in another field, at most 2 years away. And I went to him, I told him, that's my state, but I really don't want to do that. I want to work on controls, what you taught. And I explained my personal reasons and, professional, of course, reasons. If I'm listening now as an advisor, somebody who came to me and asked me that, first of all, I would be very cautious with that student.
The same.
Good news was that at least he saw me in the class and I took his class. He listened to me maybe 15 minutes without saying anything. First thing he said was, I think, I would be happy to have you as a student. Second thing he said is, you need funding to do that. He gave me some advice on but again, 2-sentence advice on that front. Maybe he said 3 or 4 sentences that I was very happy and I left. But that was him, he doesn't talk, more than necessary. That was a huge impression on me because he said what he wanted to say, what he meant, and that was enough. That I took very positively because, that was his way of communicating, but it also, it's not easy to do, but it also leaves people with a very clear communication. When you want to say what you say in professional settings and what you meant to do or meant to say, I think that that's the best way to communicate with your colleagues, students, mentors, whoever. That very minimalistic communication style I really enjoyed during my PhD. It was very, how do you say? It was very enlightening in many ways, and I think I benefited from it. Even though I couldn't stick with it, I'm maybe more talkative than he is, but how you communicate with people makes a huge difference. And also technically, I mean, he was one of the clearest thinkers I have seen, and he communicated his ideas very clearly. That made a huge impression on me too. In my career, I met interesting people, let's say, in positive ways, also negative ways, but I wouldn't talk negative stuff. I had a colleague who was, I will not name names too, who was very direct. Some people didn't enjoy that. He looked very judgmental, but I enjoyed working with a guy like him. People who challenge you constantly, not challenge your personality, but challenge you, your ideas constantly. Yeah. In a very, how do you say, they don't judge you, but they really judge what you're doing. If you can separate those things, I think those people are very, very helpful. If you can deal with, sometimes it's not easy when you come up with an idea and they say this is no good. It's not easy to take this kind of criticism. I mean, people who can challenge you genuinely, I think I found them very, very. Actually, I'll give you one instance in my life. This was on a project I worked very intensely on, and it went on to, while I was at JPL, it was what we called a flight project, a major one, which landed eventually on Mars. And I developed the algorithm that I was going to develop. It was a critical algorithm for the landing. And I developed the software, whatever, and the report. And I wrote maybe a 35-page report in LaTeX. I gave it to my lead, who is the lead of a lot of things. He's a very technical guy. His first reaction was, because he's a very pragmatic man, he doesn't want to hear anything unnecessary. He has to deal with a lot of things. He took it, started reading it. There is too much math in this. Who will read this? He threw it away. I mean, most people would be discouraged. I knew him by that time very well. But even that time, it left me with an impression that, he's a very busy guy. He has to, handle a lot of things. And I gave him a 35-page document to, of course, it wasn't on him. That document, somebody could pick it up afterwards and reproduce the algorithm from scratch, hopefully, and understand what I was trying to do. But that reaction was very telling. But then after that, something interesting happened. Another colleague of mine, who was helping with the software implementation of the algorithm in the general, flight software. He was a software person, very experienced. He said, "You didn't even read it. How do you know how good it is? He challenged him right on the spot. And he's above both of us in terms of the hierarchy at that time. This guy my lead was always very direct, aggressive person, right? He took a small pause. He took the document. He turned to him and he said, "You're right." And he later on read the damn thing. It was, I wouldn't even read it myself again. Maybe he read it, and he came and gave me some comments afterwards. In that short encounter, I went through many things. One is, I think, in a professional setting, when you are dealing with a real problem where things have to happen on a timeline, I actually appreciate people being direct, and he did that. He wasn't really disrespectful. He was a bit also, playful in a way of speaking. That was his style. But in the meantime, he took an action. It may look like a, strong action. Most people have difficulty once they commit to an action to track back if they see an issue with the action. And at the same time, the other colleague mentioned what you're doing is not really optimal, let's say. Right away, he recognized it and he took a step back and he followed through. But it didn't stop him to criticize this and other thing. That engine was still running in him, to go after things. Yeah. And that's when I realized, and I had another colleague like that I mentioned, who was very critical of what people did. And even when he was wrong, it didn't stop him. That engine was running. And I think that's an important thing. We are not here to how do you say, we are professionals. Ultimately, we have to understand each other's psychology to some extent, but ultimately, everything is about doing the work. If the work is done, everybody is happy. If the work is not done, no matter what we do, nobody is happy. So I think that energy to be critical of what's going on is something that I learned earlier in my career, which I appreciated a lot, actually. And I, not taking things personal, but this is work. That's what will judge us, not what we felt about each other at the moment.
I totally agree. I mean, all these are great suggestions. Thanks a lot. So, I would like to ask the next two questions. The first one is, this is more like a YouTube like a question. So, if you collaborate with any famous scientist, engineer from history, it can be from controls field, out of controls field, who would it be and why?
Well, I didn't expect that question, but give me a second. Let me think. A few names come to my mind, but who would I like to collaborate? I'm probably gonna forget somebody. I would have loved to collaborate with Euler.
Yeah.
The number of things that he discovered, I'm sure, just by being around him, you will get a bunch of ideas. I would have, this is from a point of mathematics, and he was applying his mathematics, and he was a foundational character in mathematics. But also Tesla, who wouldn't love to work with Tesla as an engineer? Oh, yes. I mean, the number of ideas he came up with, some of them might not have worked, but again, being around somebody who is that creative could have been a blessing. The number of, seeing this kind of people in action, seeing the ideas coming out of them, participating, hoping maybe you can even help them. That could have been a fantastic experience. Who else? Maybe I should say one. I should also focus on. I'm trying to think of a physicist. I would have loved. I would have loved to learn more on physics. Like that's again, the only physics I use is Newtonian physics. Beyond that, so maybe Maxwell. Maybe or Dirac. I don't know. One of them would. I think Dirac passed away in '80s. So if maybe I could have met him. I don't know. But the first two comes to my mind are Euler and Tesla. Maybe as a physicist, I would have maybe Dirac. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. So the last question is, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be and why? I mean, of course, this is related with academia, but question is open-ended.
I mean, academically, professionally.
Of course, assuming you are not going to say don't work on academia or something like this. I'm kidding. So.
No. I'm not going to say that. But I think people discover things. People in academia who went far in research, or even in industry, who did a lot of interesting things. I think they discover things along the way, and those discovery moments are very valuable for them. Things happen smoothly in time, but there are moments where you discover things that you thought, okay, that if I could have discovered earlier, it would have been better. I think I would have asked my younger self to be more critical of what I was learning. Nobody went through an optimal education when they were young. It's not clear there is one form of education system that's optimal for everybody anyway. So, but I think critical thinking is something that we develop in time. It's not given, So I wish if I met myself when I was 12 or something, I would have told myself to be more critical in what I learned and trust my judgment and instincts about, if I don't think something is clear, go after it. If I'm interested, especially, don't assume that I'm not the one not understanding it. It's everybody got it. Most people, when they are young, they think everybody understands everything but themselves. That's not true, obviously. It's the other way around, typically. If somebody is acting too sure of themselves, typically it's a sign that they are not really getting it.
Yeah.
Don't be intimidated by any of these things. When you're young, you may be. And be critical of what you're learning. Even what you're learning is not necessarily what you should be learning. These things change in time. So it's not like there is a global rule that determines at this instant in time, that's what you should be learning. So be critical, trust your abilities and yourself. Don't give up thoughts, ideas that you think interesting just because somebody else didn't encourage or they discouraged it actively. So, that I think builds a lot of confidence in somebody's abilities too. So I think that's something you have to do. Of course, you have to survive too in the meantime somehow, but, I think survival becomes easy when you are not intimidated. So I think when you're young, those are important things to feel confident about your steps and so on. And of course, work hard, for hard work to be not painful also, I would say, go after something you like so that it's, you'll have still some pain probably, but that minimizes pain, hopefully maximizes the pleasure you get out of that hard work.
Yeah.
Actually, again, a sports analogy can be useful. If you do any sports, initially you are the most clumsy. Everybody, if somebody else is doing it for a couple of years, he will be ahead of you, right? And you're not going to enjoy this. It takes time to enjoy things, as effort and time. So you have to somehow believe in that process too. Those are the things I would tell. Be faithful in the process. It will bring you something eventually, but also don't build the confidence by being critical of what you're learning and what you are developing. Those are maybe advices I will give to younger self. And I think hard about what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't do that. They follow what comes around in everything, in professional life, personal life. They, sometimes too much of idealization abstracts you out of life, but I realize to some extent what you want. Try to define it, because if you don't know what you want, it's like going after things without having an aim. You will be going left and right. You will lose a lot of energy. You will end up with things that you don't like to have. I think it's an important activity that you have to constantly be involved in, which is defining what you want from life, whatever life is left ahead of you.
Thanks a lot. So, all great suggestions. So, Behcet, I want to express my gratitude for your time and willingness to share your great responses with me and with the audience. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And this is a great, I guess, YouTube series. I should start watching them myself. Thanks for involving me, talking to me. Thanks for your time, too.